Hey there, let me ask you a quick question. Why is it that incredibly ambitious teams, the ones packed with top-tier talent and endless resources, so often struggle to actually just start their most important projects? They plan, they strategize, they hold a million meetings, but they just don't execute. Well, today's explainer is a dedicated briefing designed to solve that exact problem for you and your organization. And we're going to do it by looking back centuries to uncover a really powerful framework for execution, all rooted in feudal Japanese wisdom. Let's dive right in.
Here's our quick roadmap for this briefing. We'll start with the parable of Yuki. Then we'll move into the illusion of progress, Musashi's discipline, Kaizen and small daily improvements, and we'll wrap up by looking at prioritizing commitments over feelings.
All right, part one, the parable of Yuki. To really understand why our modern corporate teams freeze up, we need to look at a cautionary tale about a young samurai from feudal Japan named Yuki. Now, Yuki was incredibly ambitious. He dreamed of becoming the absolute greatest warrior in the land. He'd spent hours talking about his grand plans, reading stories of famous battles, and vividly imagining himself winning these huge victories. In his imagination, he truly believed his intense ambition to master weapons, learn advanced strategy, and win battles would just naturally lead him to greatness. He thought his desire was enough. He was essentially building the ultimate perfect slide deck, but entirely in his head. But contrast that with his reality. When it was actually time to pick up a sword and do the daily training, well, the excuses rolled in. The weather wasn't quite right, he felt a little unwell, or, and this is my personal favorite, he needed to plan more carefully before beginning. He constantly avoided the hard work.
As the years passed, his dreams grew much larger, but his actual skills remained tiny. Younger, much more disciplined warriors who just put their heads down and trained every single day easily surpassed him. Yuki eventually realized a pretty painful truth. His dreams hadn't lifted him higher, they'd actually made him weaker. Ambition without action equals weakness. He was left totally frustrated, unprepared, and just full of regret.
Moving on to part two, the illusion of progress. Let's pivot from feudal Japan to your modern workplace environment. Why exactly do we act like Yuki? Well, Yuki's identity as a dreamer created this massive gap between what he desired and what he was actually willing to do. He found incredible comfort in imagining his future rather than enduring the everyday discomfort of practice. Look, procrastination isn't always just staring blankly at a wall. It's often preparation without practice. It's disguised delay. And the psychology behind this is absolutely fascinating. The more Yuki spoke of his plans without acting, the more his mind rewarded him as if he had already achieved something. We see this in business all the time, right? Teams hold endless alignment meetings, they draft massive strategy documents, and the brain releases a little hit of dopamine. It feels like actual achievement, but talking without doing is an illusion. We're literally just drifting further from the work that actually matters.
Think about this quote for a second. To wait for motivation before beginning is like waiting for perfect weather before starting a journey. Think about how often highly paid professionals do exactly this. How often do you or your teams wait for perfect market conditions, or total corporate alignment, or a burst of pure inspiration before launching a stalled project? The reality is, you might end up waiting forever, while your competitors, the ones who are actually willing to walk out into the rain, reach the destination way ahead of you.
Which brings us to part three, Musashi's discipline.
So we've seen what failure looks like with Yuki. Now, to see what true, unstoppable execution actually entails, we're going to turn to the legendary swordsman Miyamoto Musashi. Unlike the amateur who tries to transform their life or their business in a single dramatic moment of inspiration, Musashi devoted himself to steady, small actions. He relied entirely on the quiet rhythm of repetition. He treated training as a way of life, not just some special event. Greatness isn't built in sudden bursts of energy or one-off corporate hackathons. The samurai, who are so well known for their dramatic battles, actually became strong through the humble, often totally boring discipline of daily practice. They trained not when they felt ready, but because it was simply their way of life.
Yagyu Munenori, a great samurai teacher, famously said, "The sword that waits for perfect conditions never leaves its sheath." I want you to look at your own organization right now. What is your sheathed sword? Is it an unlaunched software product? Maybe a difficult restructuring plan? A bold new marketing campaign? If you wait for the absolutely perfect moment to draw that sword, you're going to wait forever.
Section 4. Kaizen, or small daily improvements.
Okay, let's get practical here. How do we build this discipline and combat workplace paralysis as leaders?
Well, the samurai captured this solution perfectly in the teaching of Kaizen, the way of small improvements. Imagine an anonymous, frankly kind of lazy samurai student. Instead of planning a massive 10-hour workout, he just practices a single sword form each morning. Just one. Extremely low effort. His friends laugh at the tiny amount of effort and call it useless, but he continues anyway. Over time, the movement becomes completely automatic. He's formed a habit. His body grows stronger, his discipline runs deeper. And months later, because he built a rock-solid foundation, he learns advanced skills with complete ease. Mastery is achieved. Meanwhile, his friends who waited around for a giant burst of motivation are still stuck at the starting line. A mountain is climbed one single step at a time, not by staring at the peak wishing you were already up there.
So does motivation actually spark action? I really want to challenge a massive prevailing corporate myth right here. We so often think that our employees, or ourselves, must feel motivated before we can begin complex, difficult tasks. We think motivation is the initial spark. But the samurai understood that this is completely backwards.
Look at it this way. An amateur waits for motivation, believes motivation creates action, and relies entirely on their feelings. But a professional acts despite resistance. They know for a fact that action creates momentum, and they rely on habits. This is the counterintuitive truth of execution. Motivation is not the spark, it's the flame that follows. Action brings momentum, and that momentum creates the energy we mistakenly call inspiration. The highest achievers in your company aren't the ones who feel inspired every single day. They're the ones who act even when they really don't feel like it.
Finally, Section 5, Commitments over Feelings.
This right here is the core mandate for you as corporate leaders if you want to build a truly resilient, execution-focused culture. Often, our intense need for motivation comes from pure fear. Specifically, the fear of starting. We fear the discomfort of starting when we're tired, or we fear that our efforts won't immediately feel rewarding, so naturally, we avoid the work. But true discipline is not the absence of laziness or fear. Let me repeat that because it's crucial. Discipline doesn't mean you never feel lazy. It means moving through that discomfort to execute anyway. True strength isn't the ability to act when conditions are perfect. It's the ability to act when conditions are deeply, deeply imperfect.
As the warriors once said, "I am not controlled by my feelings. I am guided by my commitments." Think about what happens if you hand control of your future or your company's future over to your emotions. Emotions are completely fleeting. Readiness is an illusion. True strength doesn't mean saying, "I feel like doing this." Strength means saying, "I will do this, whether I feel like it or not." The power to act without waiting for motivation is exactly what shapes an incredible career and an unstoppable team.
So, I leave you with this provocative question. Is your team guided by their feelings or their commitments? As you step out of this briefing and back into your organization, I really want you to reevaluate exactly how you drive productivity. Stop waiting for the perfect weather. Draw the sword and take that one small daily step today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.